Hello, I'm Rob Sisson. A common question I'm asked is how to connect a printer to a network. This can be a little bit confusing. There's a couple of methods you can use, so I'm going to try and explain and illustrate how this works. Firstly, I'm going to show a direct connection. If you want to connect to a current network, you can skip to a later part in this video. On the screen here shows a direct connection. So you have your printer, which might be an Epson, a Roland, a Muto, a Mamaki. Ethernet cables plugged directly into the printer and then directly into your PC. So what do we need to do to make the connection? Firstly, this network needs an identity. It needs what is known as an IP address. So to do this, what we're going to do is go into the Start menu, type in Network and Sharing, or Network and Sharing Center. I click this option here. The Network and Sharing Center pops up. Now if I plug my Ethernet cable into my laptop here, you should see that a connection is made. So it comes up saying identifying. Eventually it will tell you it's an unidentified network, but that's absolutely fine. What we want to do here is click on Ethernet. Click on Properties. Scroll down to IPv4, Internet Protocol version 4, and click Properties, and you'll see this window. To give an IP address to this network, click Use the following IP address. Now just to keep things really simple here, I'm going to give an IP address of 100, 100, 100, 100. The subnet mask changed to 255, 255, 255, and leave the last three digits as 0, the last bank of numbers as 0. This will make sense later on. OK the window, close the previous windows, and this creates a network. So for example, if I type in 100, 100, 100, 100, the subnet mask was 255, 255, 255, 000. So this represents this network here. So the network now has an identity. So what we now need to do is give the printer a specific IP address. So on your printer, locate the LCD display, locate the network settings, and you need to enter for the IP address 100, 100, 100, and it's this last digit that will change. So to keep things simple again, 101. If you had two printers to connect, you could call the next one 102, and the next 103, and so on. So this last digit determines the identity of your individual printer. The subnet mask can be kept the same on the printer. So find the subnet mask option, enter 255, 255, 255, 000. So now the network has an identity, the printer has its own identity, it's on the same network range, but it has its own identification entity IP address, in this case 101. So what you can now do is over on the PC, and specifically your RIP software, wherever you add a printer in that RIP software, you need to enter the IP address of 100.100.100.101, and you can do the same if 102, 103 for if you've got more than one printer. But once you've entered that IP address and you've verified or okayed that particular window, the connection will now be made. Now that is how to connect a printer directly to your PC. That's it, the direct connection is complete. So that's nice and easy. But what happens if you have a larger network? Perhaps you've already got an established network that you're connected to. So if we scroll down here, and you can have a look at this example. So here we've got a router, and then you've got a larger network. So on this network, this example, there's 3 PCs. So these are already connected to the network. So they may be plugged in direct to the router, they may be plugged into a wall point around the building. Now the advantage to this setup is that you can have more than one PC connected to the printer, because they'll all run on the same network. So what I want to do is add a printer to the network. So I'm going to take my Ethernet cable and I'm going to physically plug the printer into the wall point or into the router. Now the process is going to be very, very similar to setting up a direct network, but rather than giving the network an address, the network will already have an IP address. So we need to establish what that IP address is. To do that, click on Start, type in CMD, and you'll see command prompt appear. In the command prompt, type IP config, all one word, and then press enter. Now this will list your network details. So if I scroll up here, okay, you're looking for IPv4 address, and you'll see in this instance it's 130.2.200.23. Now that's a specific address to my particular PC, but I now know that the network details are as follows. So if we note this in on my illustration, so 130.2.200.23. I know the subnet mask was 255.255.0.0.0.0.0. Okay, so this address relates specifically to my particular PC, but it tells me the network details. So I know this network is on a range of 130.2. It's then these second banks of numbers that are going to change in my instance. That's because I've got 255.255, which means that the first two banks of numbers for the IP address stay the same. It's the next two banks that differ. If, for example, you have 255.255.255, that means your first three banks of numbers will stay the same, and only the last number will change. So in this instance, I know that I can set my IP address on my printer to 130.2, and then the banks of numbers are going to change. So to keep things simple, I can do .100.100. The subnet mask will always match as before, so 255.255.0.0.0.0.0. As soon as you enter these details onto your printer, the printer is now configured. So I want to connect my PC running my RIP software. I may want to connect two PCs. So I open the RIP software, locate the options to add a new device, and obviously enter the IP address. And in the IP address, I'm going to enter the IP address of the printer. So 130.2.100.100. And if I want to do exactly the same over here on another PC, exactly the same thing, enter the IP address 130.2.100.100. Now these two PCs where I've entered this address in my RIP software will now connect to this printer, allowing you to print to this particular device. The process is now complete and you can print accordingly. Again, if for any reason that the connection isn't made, double check the addresses, double check the IP config in the command prompt window, make a note of that address, and then make sure that your address for the printer is on the same range, i.e. the same, for example here, 130.2, so where it's 255.255, those first two banks of numbers need to match. It's then the second bank of numbers that will differ. That will now allow you to print and run the system correctly. If there's any problem at all, please get in touch at www.expresstechnical.co.uk.